Hi all, it's me, Hartley from Bring Forth, and I'd like to discuss, how will I put this? Being evil when it calls for it, and how painful it is if you were good to somebody who was a bully to you and you continue to be good, to think about it decades later, and how little it hurts in comparison to get into a fight with someone, even if it's a bad one. And if you're a good person, then it's completely okay. When you get into a fight, your system tells you that you've been good and so on and so forth, and you tend to avoid fights as a result. You get a sense of good from them, but you always get a sense of good from things. It's hard to explain what I mean, but you will know what I mean when I tell you that arguments don't get to you. They don't faze you. If you are, however, bad or evil, or somebody who should react to violence with violence, at least in some situations, then it is incredibly painful to look back on those situations where you were good to somebody who was mean to you, and you tried to be good, but you realized the situation called for you to defend yourself. How painful it is to be in those situations. I think it's something that should be perhaps covered in more detail. This is set 27 because I just woke up to a new day, even though it's 6 in the evening and I made videos on the previous day or in this day. So anyway, this is set 27. I'm checking if it's set 27. Yes, set 27 part 1. And this is about the pain of not being violent or when the situation calls for it. So I've been looking at the apartment availability in my region, in the part of the city where I want to live, and there are a few apartment showings here and there, so I will have to show up and make a presentation, but they are few. I'm thinking it'll probably take me quite a while to get an apartment. In the city queue for 3 months now, and they're asking me to renew my application as the queue has to be reshuffled or something along those lines. They have to remake it every 3 months, possibly to stop people who no longer need an apartment to actually having an application there, because it may be cheaper for paperwork that way. I don't know. Either way, that's 2 days from now, and tomorrow I get my injection again. I've missed about 13 days, and I can say I don't like the anxiety. I don't like when I'm sober. I don't like the anxiety that comes with not being medicated. It feels odd, especially in high anxiety situations like this, because this place is quite high anxiety. And I'm going to make another video. Damn it, I missed that one. That was today, 15:45 to 16. I missed that one. Well, let's just call it being too close to my ex's place. Cough. That's a bloody shame. These things should not happen, because this is not a good place to live for an extended period of time. There's a second one almost next to it. Quite tiny bit cheaper and a bit bigger. And its presentation is the day after tomorrow, so I will probably visit that one. Asunnossa ei tupakoida, there's no smoking in the apartment, there's no pets in the apartment, and the rent will be raised according to the price index of consumers at minimum 2% per year, and it's up to 700 maximum from social services, and it's 660. So if they raise it by 2%, it will be raised by 12 bucks. So it will be 672. So I will be able to stay there for quite a while. Social services will pay for my rent and my rent insurance. I had a 9-year rental agreement that I lost recently due to becoming, well, psychically shocked. Separated from my girlfriend and my parents split up at the same time. It was terribly traumatic, so I couldn't get my bills paid properly, but I managed to pay the rent with the amount in the vakuuvuokra or rent insurance. This place requires 3 months of back rent for their rent insurance, and it's possible that social services only pay 2 months. I haven't checked, but I don't know for sure. I will inquire when I am there. Actually, I will probably inquire the day after tomorrow when I have the midday meeting at the city hall thing, or unemployment services council place, where I have to change the application on the public rent place. So that's my private life. So yeah, how painful it is not to react violently when violence is called for by the situation. Or surrendering without realizing that you're actually surrendering. When someone tries to stab you with a pair of scissors, not grabbing the handle, which I did when somebody tried to stab me with a pair of scissors at school. So I'm still considering school more violent than this place, so go high schoolers. Keep us all sane. Help us deal with our shit. Take all your shit and put it away. I'm saddened by the UK leaving the Union. So sad. Pigeons. Somebody asked me a question for my live stream. I'm trying to find it. Chinese investment in Africa, it's like European colonialism once again, but in the form of economic takeovers, and it's happening without much notice. Africa's had 2 previous true colonial masters, the Arab and their slave trade, which was very noticeable, and the Europeans and their slave trade, which was equally noticeable. And it's beginning to have a third one, which is the Chinese slave trade, which is China making its own imperial presence felt in Africa. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, because Africa could use the developmental aid and connections, but it's taking a somewhat sinister tone. They aren't as interested in things like the environment as they should be. So it's a little, perhaps not as good as is advertised, but it's something that should probably continue. At least they're attempting to do something economically in the world. And Africa has the resources to make it worthwhile if you manage to get in line with whatever the population is currently doing. Which reminds me of Zimbabwe and its attempt to get the white farmers back. I mean, it's a pity, is what it is. There's your world market for you. Who's being horrible by who? Zimbabwe is such a mess. I don't know how they manage that, but they are doing something. They're doing something. Spearheading world scientific research. Just go full social democracy in an African country all of a sudden. Yeah, everybody gets paid for doing nothing. What now? Military takes over within 5 seconds. What now? We had a radio communication error. Let's keep trying social democracy amongst the developed nations for now. Seems to be something along the lines of G20 nations, and somebody who is closely associated with one of those, in our case, seems to be through Norway. Could be said the reason we don't have a unified country in the north is that the Norwegians don't want to pay the social services bills for the other countries. But the problem with that is that Finland has twice the Norwegian oil reserves in peat, so we could actually use the common development speed of a unified country. With each common language getting a sub-dialect status and having to learn one of the other languages in school. Just to pander a little to the anti-Swedish crowd. School Swedish sucks. It's insane. So yeah, I missed an apartment showing. So sad. And I have to make sure I don't do that again. It's very bad for me because this isn't a place for long-term living. I mean, for real. And I'm finally getting money from my internet activities in and of themselves, which I wondered how long it would take for somebody to actually give me money instead of services like buying things for me. And it took about a year of active forum participation in the way of manning the chat room and just having a consistent presence for somebody to actually notice that I'm not doing well economically and go like, that's not bad. I've gotten $50 on the street when I was sleeping in a flower pot stand, like flowers in the daytime and berries and such. Sleeping in one of those things after it was closed and was hygienically storable, you know. I was in the wood bench thing. Some old guy stopped and started talking with me, and after a while handed me $50 and walked away. I was like, cool. Just been keeping a tap on these things. So I'm going to have to change a few videos that I've made. I'm still not content with how I discuss the lives of the other people here. I'm not content with it. It doesn't feel good. It's gossipy. It doesn't feel like me. I mean, even after I have those videos up, it doesn't feel like me. So I think I'm gonna need to change a few of those. In Finland, you're not obligated to help police research. You have no legal obligation to help the police in any way. You can simply just say, I won't answer any questions throughout the entire procedure. It's nice. That's how we know it's not a police state. I still want to do a old computers retirement center. It's not a place where we dismantle old computers. It's where we run old computers at the clockwork frequencies where they live the longest and just allow them to do boink research on a common project that we'll discuss at the corporation at regular intervals. So it'll be like a place where your computer can be retired and we know that it'll do something helpful and it'll be maintained. It's like an old folks home for computers. Good joke. Maybe many of those alien abduction experiences are hazy memories of people walking to their own future. It's filled with bright light and people who are nice to me. I can't remember which African country it was, or it could have been a South American country, but one of those countries halved their industrial tax for corporations and doubled their tax income for the entire country. Because their taxes were so heavy that no ordinary people could start corporations, so the corporations were basically undermanned. Those are the kind of loopholes that I'm looking for. Where do we know the exact percentage that the corporation tax should be, where you people actually does the work? How would we adjust it for different countries? I mean, let's say it has to be 8% for social democracies of a single homogeneous population, and 9% for distributed populations, and 10% for not social democracies, and so on. Or vice versa. There has to be some kind of math to it. It seems nobody has the foggiest. I would say you can measure when corporate tax is too low by the number of super corporations in your country compared to other countries. I mean, kinda. When it starts to become super corporate country, then it's basically too low, and when you don't get, soda on the street, it's basically too high. When stores have trouble maintaining a 24-hour open policy. That would make sense. Random question and answer from Law of One, session 84, question 20. Yeah. This is such a long question. Which entities incarnate at this time at this planet would be of that category manufacturing all of their catalyst? We find your query indeterminate, but can respond that the number of those who have mastered outer catalyst completely is quite small. Most of those harvestable at this space-time nexus have partial control over outer illusion and are using the outer catalyst to work upon some bias which is not yet in balance. What does he presently do there? What is his job or occupation? What does he do? This entity serves the creator in its own way. Long question again. Should we discontinue this communication because of these changes, or should we continue? You may do as you wish. However, we are unable to use this instrument at this space-time nexus without these modifications. Ooh, I by the way had a good hit. I cleaned my bong. 4 weed packages worth of dried up resin. I don't mean to ask the same question twice, but there are some areas I consider so important that the greater understanding may be obtained by possible restatement, in other words. Thank you very much for your patience. Yesterday you also mentioned that there was no harvest at the end of the last 25,000 year period. There were harvestable entities who shall choose the manner of their entrance into fourth density. Can you tell me by what you mean by how they will choose the manner of their entrance into the fourth density? These are shepherds, or as some have called them, the elder race. These shepherds, or as some have called them, the elder race, shall continue the time and space, shall choose the time and space of their leaving. They are unlikely to leave, and their other selves are harvestable also. Would you give me an example of the last statement? We prefer this example with the reminder that each system is quite distorted and its teachings always half lost. However, one such system is called the Tantric Yoga system. Then was the Confederation responsible for Earth receiving nuclear power? It is a point one cannot judge what is caused. The basic equation which precedes this work was an equation brought through by Wanderer dedicated to the service of the planet. That this work should have become the foundation for instruments of destruction was not intended and was not given. From this infinity then must have come what we experience as creation. What was the next step or next evolvement? Infinity became aware. This was the next step. Long question again. Does the Orion group use this principle to create conditions brought about to suit their purposes? We will answer more specifically than the question. The Orion group uses daydreams of hostile or negative natures to feedback or strengthen those thought forms. Long question. Would an unflawed crystal be considerably more effective than the flawed one that we now have? Without attempting to deem priorities you may choose, we may note that regularized or crystallized entity in its configuration is as critical as the perfection of the crystals used. Can you tell me if we have covered the necessary material to this point to, if we publish, make the necessary reparations for the naive actions? We mean no disrespect for your service. We do not expect to make full reparations for these distortions. We may, however, offer our thoughts in the attempt. The attempt is far more important to us than the completeness of the result. The nature of your language is such that which is distorted cannot, to our knowledge, be fully undistorted, but only illuminated somewhat. Could RA recommend work appropriate for removing indigo ray blockages? We cannot recommend for the general situation, for in each case the distortional vortex is unique. In this particular nexus, the more appropriate working is in the mental and emotional powers of analysis and observation. When the strongest and least distorted complex is set in support, then the less strong portion of the complex shall be strengthened. This entity has long worked with this catalyst. However, this is the first occasion wherein the drugs, the delta pain, the sharpness catalyst have been refused. I had already determined to exclude him from these workings. I have only determined to let him read the material. The only thing is that I have noticed within the material as it exists now, there is a certain statement that will allow us to understand who I believe Spectre really was. It seems my duty to remove this from his knowledge to preserve the same free will that you attempted to preserve by not defending origins of Spectre and his conduct in Israel. Am I correct? This is a matter for your discretion. Was the next action taken by the Confederation when the call occurred? This is correct. Close channel, and I don't feel like closing it. Now all of those, let me be sure I'm right then our Sun is a sub-logos of the logos that is the major galactic logos, correct? This is correct. I was thinking specifically if an entity was in Hiroshima or Nagasaki at the time and he was reaching harvestability at the end of our cycle, would this death by nuclear bomb possibly create such trauma that he would not be harvestable at the end of the cycle? That was specifically my question. This is incorrect. Once the healing has taken place, the harvest may go forth unimpeded. However, the entire planet will undergo healing for this action. No distinction is made betwixt the victim and the aggressor. This due to the damage done to the planet. Then the third spiral radiating from the top of the pyramid you say is for energizing. Can you tell me what you mean by energizing? The third spiral is extremely full of the positive effects of direct prana, and that which is placed over such a shape will receive shocks energizing the electromagnetic fields. This can be most stimulating in third density applications of mental and bodily configurations. However, if allowed to be in such place over long, such shocks may traumatize the entity. Long. Ra then has not moved at any time into one of the other major galaxies. Is this correct? This is correct. What would happen to the entity then if he did this? What happened to his chariot? The creator is one being. The vibratory level of those able to reach corresponding boundaries is such that upon seeing the love light net, it is impossible to break this law. Therefore, nothing happens, no attempt is made. There is no confrontation. The only beings who are able to penetrate the quarantine are those who discover windows or distortions of space-time continuous surrounding a planet's energy field. Through these windows they come. These windows are rare and unpredictable. Would you expand on what you just said about expelling the breath? I wasn't quite sure what you meant. The repetition of that performed well at this working is advisable if the circle is walked in less than the appropriate configuration. Would you give me the condition of the instrument? The physical energy deficit has somewhat increased. The vital energy distortions are somewhat improved. Does Ra have any experience or knowledge of or travel to in one form or another any of these other galaxies? Yes. Thank you. Can you tell me why I got sick during Karl Raschke's talk? We scan your thoughts. They are correct and therefore we do not infringe upon by confirming them. The space-time of your letter speaking was drawing near and you came under aura and attacked due to the great desire of some positively oriented entities to become aware of the Law of One. This may be expected, especially when you are not in a group lending strength to each other. Can you tell me your reason for not being visible to them? We allowed visibility. Can you tell me your reason for being visible to them? We allowed visibility because it did not make any difference. Then we have a condition where at the end of the first 25,000 year period, I would say I'm guessing that the Guardians discovered that there was no harvest of either positive or negatively oriented entities. Tell me what happened, what actions were taken, etc. There was no action taken except to remain aware of the possibility of a calling for help or understanding among the entities of this density. The Confederation is quite concerned with the preservation of the conditions conducive to learning. This, for the most part, revolves around the problem of distortion of free will. Could you describe the robot? The robot may look like any other being. It is a construct. Do we have enough time for me to ask if the death almost immediately after the cessation of war of this entity could that have been so that it could be immediately reincarnated to positively make harvest? This is precisely correct. Then why do we have the extreme starvation problem in general in the area of Africa at this time? Is there any metaphysical reason for this, or is this purely random occurrence? The previous assumption was correct as to the catalytic action of starvation and in health. However, it is within the free will of an entity to respond to this plight of other selves, and offering of the needed foodstuff and substance is an appropriate response within the framework of your learned teaching at this time, which involves the growing sense of love for this and love for and service to other selves. And we have a second density being who have primarily motivation towards service to self and possibly a little bit of service to others with respect to their immediate families, going into the third density and carrying this bias with them, but being in a position now where this bias will slowly be modified to one which is aimed towards the social complex and then ultimately towards union with the all. Am I correct? You are correct. Then I would guess that the 21st archetype would represent contact with the intelligent infinity. Is this correct? This is correct, although one may also see the reflection of this contact as well as contact with the intelligent energy, which is the universe, or as you have sometimes called it more provincially, the world. Then the concept of service to self or service to others is mandatory if we wish to have work, whether it be in consciousness or work in mechanical or Newtonian concept in the physical. Is this correct? This is correct with one addendum. The Correlus may have understood this term is wound, is potential, is ready. The thing that is missing without polarizing is the charge. How did they accomplish this? What was necessary for them to accomplish this? All of the aforementioned entities were aware through memory of the Atlantean understandings having to do with the use of various centers of mind, body, spirit, complex energy, influx, and attaining the gateway to intelligent infinity. What was the home or origin of the entities that took Charlie? These entities are of the Sirius galaxy. Sirius is a star. In this case, it would actually be logos. Would you do this, please? The most efficient mode of contact is that which you experience at this space-time. The infringement upon the infringement upon free will is greatly undesired. Therefore, those entities which are wonders upon your plane of illusion will be the only subject for the thought projections which make up the so-called close encounters and meetings between positively oriented social memory complexes and wonders. Was any action taken immediately, or did you wait for a call? The Council of Saturn acted only in allowing the entry into the third density of other mind-body spirit complexes of third density, not wonders. But those who saw third density experiences, this was done randomly so that free will would not be violated, for there was not yet a call. This would indicate to me that in the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Queen's Chamber, as it is called, would be the chamber for initiation. Is this correct? Again, you penetrate the outer teaching. The Queen's Chambers would not be appropriate or useful for healing work, as that involve the use of energy in more synergetic configuration rather than configuration of the centered being. Did this have any detrimental effect on the instrument? Very little. The instrument felt the presence it has come to associate with cold and spoke. The instrument did the appropriate thing. Long questions. I think that it might be a good idea if we terminated the contact at this time, allow the instrument to gain more necessary energy before continuing. This is my decision at this time. I would very much like to continue the contact, but it seems to me, though I can tell the instrument's level, that the instrument should not use up any more energy. We are responding to an unasked query. However, it is most salient, and therefore we beg for your forgiveness for this infringement. The energy has been lost to the instrument dedicated to this purpose only. You may do as you will, but this is the nature of the instrument's preparation for contact, and is the sole reason we use it. But they were just bothering me. We will continue in our next session with the Law of One that keep that uppermost in the scope of the book, and try to get more deeply into the philosophical as we build a framework for reference of the philosophy. Thank you very much. That's all for today then. Oh. on fighting cancer instead of becoming cancer. So yeah, that's all for this update.